It was a total accident that I even ended up getting into a kitchen. I was in college studying for my exams that would have taken me to university. But at the time, I was not necessarily motivated to pursue an academic path. My parents suggested that I inquire at the local restaurant about the chef position because I was started to learn to cook at home, and I was in that stage where I'm using every pan in the kitchen in order to make some mashed potatoes and some steak and some gravy. And it's really kind of a learning experience, and obviously created a lot of mess at the time. Because it's that time when you're 17, 18 and you want to eat healthier meals and you're trying to go to the gym and all these things. And fortunately, it paid off because you're immediately put into a situation where you're working with adults. You go from being kind of in a bubble as a kid, as a student, to suddenly you're in a place where with real consequences. And if you don't perform or if you don't keep up, then there's actually a real issue for the team. So that you are motivated to work hard and keep your head down and be a real team player. And I think there's a really important thing to learn earlier on, no matter what profession you go into. And it also taught me some basic organization, obviously knife skills and all the basics. And after spending about 2 years there, I decided that I would go to a restaurant nearby, which was a bit more high-end, more fine dining. And I thought, okay, perfect. This is like my next natural transition because I was to be learning new skills. I was obviously very motivated by plating and all the fine dining fancy aspects of things, and just generally learning a whole new set of skills. However, I ran into some issues at that second place because in the first place, while it was a great place to work, there were certain shortcuts and cowboy behavior, you would call it, that I wasn't aware of because I had no perspective, and that kind of became ingrained in me. Whereas at the second place, it's more professional, so they didn't really want to have to discipline me to get me up to speed. So they actually suggested I go to work in a large kitchen in London. And so as a 19, 20-year-old boy from a small town, the idea of going to the biggest city in the country was pretty life-changing, and is actually the catalyst for the rest of my career. And it wasn't something I chose to do at all. If I had the choice, I would have probably stayed in the comfort zone, just working in the same place, seeing my friends. Life was very easy and comfortable. But moving to that larger kitchen, going from a brigade of 4 or 5 chefs to suddenly there's 50 chefs, and the size of the kitchen is like a football pitch. There's a banqueting team and pastry section and a restaurant and a room service. Is an enormous thing. And what really got drilled into me was like the uniformity of everything. Everything had to follow an exact recipe, but everyone's wearing uniforms. It's just a much more professional foundation that it gave me. So that's kind of another important step in my career, because I learned kind of the organization and the professionalism that comes with working part of a large kitchen. And so then after working there, then I decided to try my hand at working at a Michelin star restaurant, because I thought that was the next progression for me. And I was still very much motivated by the fine dining side of things. So that one was a real eye-opener. It was called Gidley Park in Devon. And at the time, it was a 2 Michelin star restaurant. And that was probably the hardest thing I ever actually had to do, because you're working 14-hour days, 16-hour days, like without question. And it was just relentless because of the high quality meant that everything has to be made from scratch every 1 or 2 days. So the sheer amounts of preparation involved is just kind of boggling. And it's a small team as well. And due to the kind of hostile situation and work conditions, people would often leave. So you're already a small team, and people would just quit in the middle of the night, and then therefore everyone has to make up for one extra person section. It was just crazy. But despite the craziness and the harshness of it, the thing I learned from that was like a real attention to detail about making everything perfect and really considering why something needs to be on a plate. Like, what does it actually offer? How do the textures interfere with another? Do you have a balance of textures as well? It's really just about learning to develop a plate that's perfect and just works. And I think a lot of amateur chefs who don't go through this training, often they want to make up for what they might feel as like their inexperience or inadequacies by trying to put too much on the plate. And really what I learned is 90% of the work should be done before it even gets on the plate, and that's because it's involved with marinating and slow cooking and shredding and maybe putting into a pasta or whatever it might be. The steps were all taken beforehand, so when you actually sit down to the plate, you're just literally taking one spoon or fork and it's one bite, and then all of the work that's there is experience. That's actually kind of funny. As a chef, you put hours and hours into something that someone consumes in less than 5 minutes. But it is that satisfaction for a chef as someone enjoying the food. So it doesn't matter how long it takes, as long as it's perfect. That's enough. So after working there for close to 2 years, I was obviously quite burnt out. So I decided to get myself over to Australia and do some traveling, get out of England and the kitchen scene there. And I think that's really an important part of my journey, because the kitchen scene in London, UK, it's still at the time I was there, it was still very much set by rules, as in like, if you're preparing this dish, it should have either these accompaniments, and people kind of operating from a kind of the same playbook. Whereas in Australia, because it doesn't have the European history, people were putting anything with anything, as long as it tastes good. And that's when that really kind of light bulb went off for me, is, oh, hey, you don't have to be just serving baby leeks with halibut, for example. It can be, you can do whatever you want. And obviously there's a huge amount of Aboriginal ingredients and obviously the huge Asian influence. So that really kind of wiped the slate clean in what I thought food had to be, but I already had all the experience from before. So it was very much a breeding ground for creativity.